to I Was a Teenage Film Snob. I'm James Chalmers, your friendly neighborhood film snob. And this week, guys, I am alone again. This is another bonus episode. I did have some guests lined up for the week, but unfortunately, things didn't quite go according to plan. I was going to have Gabby and Andre return and talk about their apocalypse films, but both Gabby and I had issues with our schedules and we couldn't make it work. So we will have them on again soon, so I'm certainly not calling them out, but I'm not name dropping them to make them feel bad, not at all, but more to let you know they will be back on the show soon. It's been a minute since they've appeared, and I think we can all agree that whenever Gabby and Andre are on the show, it's always a pleasure. It's always funny, and there's always some great conversations as well. But I didn't want to go a week without an episode. I could have. Next week there may or may not be an episode. I kind of talked about some stuff coming up with me. I've got my wisdom teeth coming out, which will put me out of podcasting mode for a couple of days at least, maybe more. I will be experiencing Valium for the first time. So a lot of people have told me to get the recorder out when that happens, but I don't want to say dumb stuff. I say enough dumb stuff when I'm sober. But we're going to do a solo show. The last time I did one of these, the response was pretty positive. People seem to really dig my review of The Flash, or at least me carrying a show for 30 minutes by myself. So I'll do something similar again today. I've got a few movies I want to talk about that I've seen. I finally caught up on. I still haven't talked about Indiana Jones. I haven't talked about Across the Spider-Verse. And these movies are months old, but I did finally see Evil Dead Rise and Scream 6. So I'll talk a little bit about each of those films. But before I do, I want to talk about something that came up in the news. And, if I had a guest, we really wouldn't be able to do this. So this is a chance for me to kind of talk about it. If I sound out of breath, it's because I'm tired. So I apologize, dear listeners. Yesterday I posted on Instagram something that came out, which was very frustrating for me to read as a consumer. And I took it, I guess, very selfishly. I only thought about myself. But upon reflection, this is actually going to affect people in a pretty significant way. So yesterday it was announced that Disney have decided that as of Guardians of the Galaxy 3, they will no longer be releasing physical media in Australia. Now, I know a lot of people listening are like, well, who cares? Who cares, James? You collect physical media, but most of us use streaming already. And I get the argument. I know I'm an outlier. There are less of us now than there were 10 years ago. Hell, there are less of us now than there were 2 years ago. The problem with this is it's going to affect the consumer in a massive way. So the reason why I'm concerned is not because of my beloved physical media and steelbooks, although that is part of it. Disney have made this decision not because they're trying to save money. They're not losing money on DVDs and Blu-rays. In fact, every time they release special editions of those Marvel films and those Star Wars films and even their Pixar's and stuff like that, they sell out. There's limited pre-orders available for steelbooks and things like that, and they always sell. The reason they're stopping this is because they want to remove it globally. They want to kill physical media globally because once they do, consumers will have no choice but to subscribe to their streaming service, Disney Plus. Which, look, I understand they're a business. It makes sense, and the streaming service is great. However, as much as I'm anti-streaming service, it is a good service, and it's great for the consumer. Unfortunately, what that does is by killing killing physical media, it eliminates the opportunity for choice. You can only get Disney films one way, and that means if Disney decide to increase their subscription to $20 a month, $50 a month, $100 a month, there's nothing the consumer can do about it. Now, I don't think it's going to get that crazy. I don't think it's going to get to $100 per month, but it is a bit of a slippery slope. And if you're sitting there being like, well, I don't watch Disney films anyway. I don't care about Pixar. I don't care about Star Wars. I don't care about Marvel. That's fine. But Disney also own Fox. So I'm not talking about Alien and Predator and all the Fox Kids movies. I'm talking about The Simpsons. I'm talking about Family Guy. I'm talking about all those long-running animated series. And here's the other thing. As Disney is the exclusive owner of Fox now, if they should choose to dissolve their contract with Channel 10, then suddenly The Simpsons, which has been on free-to-air for 30 years, you now have to pay a subscription to see because you can't even buy the DVDs. So anyone who's paying attention, or anyone who's kind of noticed this, I think is rightfully upset. I'm definitely frustrated about it as well. And we don't get angry or frustrated on this show very often. We try to be very positive. But this seems like a decision made purely to control the consumer. So that's all I'm going to say about it. I don't want to make a big deal of it. Like, obviously, we're moving further and further away from physical media. But it is alarming that such a large conglomerate has been able to take away the choice from the consumer, eliminating the only possibility they have is to go with their streaming service. And if they want to up the price, they can charge us however much they want, and we can't do anything about it. We can either, if you want to watch your Disney films, you want to watch your Simpsons, you want to watch your Marvel movies after they've been in the theaters, you either subscribe and pay whatever fee they charge, or you don't watch them anymore. So it is concerning. Anyway, that's all I want to say about it. Just food for thought. I'm not one of those people who thinks we should boycott Disney. I'm not one of those people who think we should stop subscribing to Disney Plus, because ultimately it's not going to make a difference. It won't. Disney's going to do what they do. They're one of the largest companies in the world. They make all their money from their theme parks. They make the money they make on movies and TV doesn't even matter. That theme park earns so much money, as does the licensing. But it's food for thought, something for everyone to consider. And hopefully, they change their mind. Disney, for all the wrongdoings they've done, all the stupid decisions they've made in the past, they have reversed decisions. A few years ago, they fired James Gunn based on some silly things he said 10 years prior. And then they did go back on that. They rehired him, they reinstated him. He was involved in those Avengers films. He was involved in Guardians 3 as well. So Disney has been known to cop to their mistakes and change their mind on things. When they've hired the wrong people, they've gone back and gotten rid of them so that there's more creative freedom as well. So I'm not too worried yet. The only thing I'm worried about from a personal level is that, I can't get my Steelbooks anymore, especially now that my UK site doesn't work. But I'll just go to Amazon, another conglomerate who charges, as much as they want. But it is what it is. But if you're not aware of this story, or if you weren't thinking about the other side effects, think about it. The other thing is, and I haven't even touched on this, people are going to lose jobs. People who worked for Disney on the manufacturing side of things, on the distribution side of things, if there's no product to distribute, those people don't have a job anymore. So there's that also. And especially with all the strikes going with SAG and with the Writers Guild, you would think Disney would be playing it careful. They'd be doing things to preserve their image, to get the consumer to continue liking them. So it is an oddball decision. It's not a new decision. This decision has been in the works for a while. I first kind of twigged onto it about 6 to 8 weeks ago when JB Hi-Fi had a clearance on Disney films. JB Hi-Fi never has a clearance on Disney films. Disney films are a premium product. So when they were selling all their Blu-rays for $10 each, I was thinking something was up. And this kind of confirmed what my suspicions were 6 to 8 weeks ago. But yeah, so interesting news, one that no one's really talking about. I've seen bits and pieces online, but it's not been a huge story. And maybe it's because people haven't thought about it. Most people are digital at this stage, so they're not thinking about they don't care about the physical media side of things, but they haven't thought about the bigger picture, which is people losing jobs, consumers losing choice, increased price hikes with the streaming as well. So anyway, I've gone on for far longer than I intended to. I wanted to talk about it because it's something that impacts all of us who are film fans. It does impact us. And I just want to shine some light on it. But anyway, enough of that nonsense. Let's do what we do every single week on this show and talk about movies. So I've seen a number of movies. I'm actually, at the time of this recording, I'm on movie 198. So by the time this comes out, I could have started my 200th movie. Maybe not. I'm not sure. But I'll be coming pretty close, which is very exciting. And I think once I hit 200, I might take a break and watch some TV because I've ignored TV shows all year. And I've got 3 seasons of The Flash to catch up on. I've got a season of Supergirl to catch up on. I'm halfway through House of the Dragon. I'm halfway through Barry. I've got a lot of TV shows I've kind of paused. I'm halfway through Secret Invasion. So there's a lot to watch. But I digress. This is not a television podcast at this stage, although, spoilers, I have a television episode coming up very, very soon. I've been talking with a guest, and we're going to talk about a TV show for a good number of hours, I imagine. But that's in the future. So I watched 4 movies I want to talk about. We'll go with the first one I watched and then go like oldest to newest, I suppose. So I went and saw Indiana Jones Dial of Destiny in theaters with my dad. Took him. He was the man who introduced me to all of the Indiana Jones films. So it felt only right that I should take him to this latest and final installment. That's what they're saying. It's the last one. Now, I'm sure they'll find ways to spin off and sequelize it in the future, but this will be the last one with Harrison Ford. I'm not going to do what I did last time with The Flash, where I talked for half an hour about the movie and the plot and stuff like that, because I simply don't remember. I watched this movie on opening weekend in my childhood cinema, which was desolate. I had no idea how empty that cinema was going to be. I had no idea how small the screen was. They haven't updated the theater since I was a kid, but it was a very charming and pleasant experience regardless. So took the old man to go and see Indiana Jones. I've heard a lot of mixed reviews about it. Even before it was released, there were mixed reviews about it. And I think one thing we all need to be aware of with this film is it's never going to be Raiders of the Lost Ark. It's never going to be Last Crusade. Like those films were made in a time period where films were made differently. Everything was physical. Everything was on film stock. Nothing was digital. There was no CGI. All the explosions were real. So you can't compare it to the first three. Temple of Doom, as I said in my episode with Matt and David, is probably my least favorite. There's issues with that film, but I still like it a lot. But there are some issues with that film. This film is very much a product of its time. I think Harrison Ford's great. It's really good to see him come back as Indy again. It was great to have Marion return. Spoilers, I'll be spoiling all these films. I thought that Phoebe Waller-Bridge was excellent. I'd never seen her in anything before. I haven't seen Fleabag, but after this movie, I really want to watch it. It's a long movie. It goes for about 2.5 hours. And if I'm honest with you, it's probably 20 to 30 minutes too long. And that's not a criticism of the film. It could be tighter. All the other films are around the 2-hour mark. I think even Crystal Skull is about 2 hours. I rewatched Crystal Skull recently, by the way, and that flick rocks. Like I never hated it when it first came out, and then I jumped on the bandwagon when everyone else hated it. Like ashamedly, I should have stuck to my guns, but I was young. I was an idiot. But it's a fun movie, and Shia LaBeouf is not terrible in it. People kind of blame Shia for that movie. Not at all. It's really enjoyable. But I understand hardcore fans don't like it. They didn't want aliens in their Indiana Jones, and that's fine. So if you don't like your aliens in your Indiana Jones, can't speak. If you don't like aliens in Indiana Jones, maybe you'll prefer time travel, because that's what this movie is. It's a time travel film, and we'll get to it a little bit later. When that happened in the film, I was scratching my head. I was like, can we do this in an Indiana Jones film? This seems really wacky. And then I remembered that Raiders of the Lost Ark has a magic casket. Temple of Doom has human sacrifice. Last Crusade has Jesus's cup, his grail. And once I remembered all that, I was okay with it. So the movie is set in the 60s, I want to say, the late 60s, kind of around the space race, if I remember correctly. And it opens the first 20 to 30 minutes, which is probably the longest part of the movie for me, is kind of like a flashback to a traditional Indiana Jones adventure. He's been captured by Nazis trying to infiltrate their stronghold. And he's trying to stop them from, as with all these films, trying to stop the bad guys from putting a priceless artifact into Hitler's possession, and instead he wants to put it in a museum. And it's really fun. The whole opening sequence is really fun. It's fast-paced. They use some of their digital de-aging for Harrison Ford in this one. And for me, this is where the film was at its weakest. The CG just wasn't great. When you're in the shadows, when it's dark, it's okay. It looks like Indiana Jones. But in the light, he just looked too shiny. He looked too artificial and plastic. I'm not anti-de-aging. I know everyone's like, we need to stop the de-aging. It's too much. I don't have a problem with it. I thought Kurt Russell in Guardians 2 was fantastic. I even thought the de-aging in Pirates of the Caribbean 5 was pretty good. And I might be the only person I know who speaks about that movie, because that one was kind of forgotten as well. But I thought the de-aging in that was pretty good, at least when I saw it. I didn't have a problem with it. If you can do it and it complements the story, go for it. And for this, it definitely complemented the story. So I was talking to my dad about it afterwards. And I said to him, you know what? I think we got a long sequence in this film at the start with de-aged Harrison Ford, because the guy's in his 80s. He can't do the Indiana Jones thing anymore. So this film is going to rest heavily on the shoulders of the new cast. So you need to get some classic Indy in there right up front, so it feels like an Indiana Jones film before passing the torch to someone else. But nevertheless, even though the CGI wasn't great and it did go on a bit long, it was still completely entertaining. The story itself is pretty interesting. Kind of goes back and forth between this group, this Nazi who survived from the original opening scene. He's trying to get this artifact called the Dial of Destiny, which allows the user to time travel. Now, it's not like a DeLorean. It's not like Rufus's phone box in Bill and Ted. It's very sciencey. Like, you have to kind of graph the sky and you have to do all these things. It was way too complicated for me. But that's okay. Like, you don't need to understand it to enjoy the film. It's quite swashbuckling, I would say. There's some, there's quite an adventurous tone to it. The only thing, maybe my only gripe, was that Indiana Jones was kind of forced out of retirement in this film. He's kind of, at the end of his career, he's teaching, but like no one's interested in archaeology anymore. And then he's kind of forced into this adventure he doesn't really want to go on. Whereas I would have preferred him to be like, I missed this. I want to go back into the adventure again. But nevertheless, like it's still the reason for him getting in isn't that important. He gets in there, and once he's back to his old tricks, it's great. We have oh my goodness, I can't remember his name now. John Rhys Davies returns as Sally, which was really lovely to see. I would have liked more of him. I would have liked him and Indiana Jones in Egypt together again. They talked about missing the sand, which was really beautiful. But I understand why they didn't do it. So the adventure, like, ultimately, I don't really need to tell you the ins and outs of the adventure because it is just like every Indiana Jones film. Like, they're all pretty standard. Like, yes, they all are pretty excellent, but they're not too complicated. They kind of travel around the globe trying to find missing bits and pieces, and then a big event happens. That's the same with this film as well. So spoilers. I know I've spoiled a bit already, but I will do the big spoiler. They do go back in time to ancient Greece, which was probably the most difficult, as I mentioned, the most difficult part of the film for me, just because I wasn't expecting it, and it was the largest concept for an Indiana Jones film to date. I didn't dislike it. I thought it was really ballsy, but it was very, it was just a lot more than I was expecting. It was quite a grand scale. But that was really fun, kind of seeing this ancient Greek weaponry take on fighter planes and stuff like that. I can't remember the name of the philosopher now, the inventor that they made, but the guy who designed the Dial of Destiny, I think it's Archimedes. I think that's who it was. He meets Indiana Jones, and they kind of like swap in exchange. And Indiana Jones wants to stay in ancient Greece because he's got no one left in the present. But then, ultimately, it's decided he needs to go home. And then he wakes up in New York, and there's a beautiful reunion with Marion. And honestly, I'll be honest, like even though it was a long film and there were moments where I was wanting to speed up, the film made me cry. I thought the ending was beautiful. And I thought it was a fitting tribute to the series. So again, I saw this movie like over a month ago, so my brain is frazzled, but I really enjoyed it. It's not my favorite in the series. If I had to rank them off the top of my head, I would probably go Raiders first, then Last Crusade, then Dial of Destiny, then Kingdom of Crystal Skull, and then Temple of Doom down the bottom. So it sits in the middle comfortably, but I enjoy them all. And none of them are perfect films. Oh, Raiders is pretty perfect, but they're not designed to be, they're not designed to, redefine cinema. They're meant to be fun action adventures for the whole family. And this really fits into that category. So if you're a fan of the originals, if you can get a chip off your shoulder and not compare it to the originals, I think you can have a good time with it. But yeah, it's the problem. I think the biggest problem with, kind of making this film successful, because it didn't do too well, is that it wasn't marketed very well. It was marketed as the return of Indiana Jones, which is great for anyone who's kind of my age or over. If you're in your 30s or over, you know who Indiana Jones is. When I went to the movie theater that night, all the people behind the counter were kids, like 15, 16 years old. And like, unless they've got parents or grandparents who were telling them about Indiana Jones, they've got no idea who he is. And I think that really contributed to the downfall of the film. But it's really fun. It's really enjoyable. And as we always say with movies, vote with your wallet. Don't listen to me or any other critic. Go and check it out, and for yourself, and then make your own decision. It'll be on Disney Plus before you know it, and then you'll be able to watch it from the comfort of your own home. Because apparently it won't be coming to physical media. Okay, I'll stop. I promised I'd stop. Flick was also directed by James Mangold, who did Logan. So I was kind of hoping. I don't know what I was hoping for. Like, I wasn't expecting it to be the Logan of Indiana Jones films. That would have been tonally very off. But I thought he could have played with it a bit more. It was a bit of a safe film for James Mangold. Again, not a critique. Safe is fine as if you can execute it well, and it was executed very well. So Indiana Jones, loved it. Really enjoyed it. The next movie I saw was Across the Spider-Verse. I saw that a few weeks back. So it was, I think it's still in theaters, but it's at the end of its run. When we went and saw it, I went and saw it with my buddy Josh, who's been on the show a number of times. That was the cinema was empty. I think there were about 7 of us in total. Did not take away from my enjoyment whatsoever. The flick is long. It's longer than Into the Spider-Verse, and it is ambitious. It is so big. For an animated film, it's huge. It opens, what I loved about it was it opened on Gwen's story. So the last film was very much about Miles, and this is very much a Miles movie as well. But that starts with Gwen and kind of her experience, her kind of her first foray into being Spider-Woman, and then also how she got to join this interdimensional kind of society of spider people, run by Spider-Man 2099, and Jessica Drew Spider-Woman, and a bunch of other spider folk as well. So that's kind of the opening, and then we cut back to Miles and kind of his experience being Spider-Man. And he's been Spider-Man for about a year, I think, if I remember correctly. Lots of wonderful Easter eggs and references to the first film. So the site of the particle collision in the original film, that's still there. The city is still destroyed from that, and like it's constantly referenced, and turns out to be the origin point of our villain Spot, who isn't in the movie all that much, considering he's the primary villain. But whenever he's in, he's very entertaining. He's voiced by Jason Schwartzman, and very funny. It's a very funny film. So Miles is kind of getting used to being Spider-Man. He's still, as he's getting older, he's having more disagreements with his parents. He's kind of rebelling a bit more, and then he finds out that Gwen is in his universe because now she's part of the society. She can travel throughout the multiverse as she wants to, and obviously he's in love with her. Spoiler alert! If you couldn't figure that out from the first movie, and so he's just trying to hang out with her and spend time with his people, his spider people. Shenanigans ensue, I would say, and it results in Miles sneaking into the multiverse. And because he doesn't have one of these fancy watches, he's glitching, just like all the other Spider people did in the previous film. Now he's consistently glitching, and he's causing havoc wherever he goes. In fact, what we learn in this movie is that everything he did in the first film had a very negative impact on the multiverse as a whole. And Spider-Man 2099 and the whole army of Spider people are trying to patch the multiverse back up because of the errors made in that first movie. We get to jump into a bunch of universes. We get to see Karan Sony play Spider-Man. Spider-Man, I think he's the Indian Spider-Man. I can't remember what his actual name is. In a beautiful sequence. Every universe has its own animation style. Every character is animated in a different way. Spider-Punk is actually animated in multiple ways for different parts of his body. It's very, very, very cool. Played by Daniel Kaluuya, if I remember correctly. And they jump through all these different universes until Miles kind of realizes that he's the only Miles in the multiverse. All the other Spider people were intended to be Spider-Man and Spider-Woman, but Miles was an accident. And what we find out later, he was an accident caused by the villain Spot. So Spot created Miles, and then Miles created Spot, which is very comic book. So they jump around, going through all sorts of different adventures. I'm jumping around again. It's been a while since I've seen this one, and it's such a large film. There's so much to cover that I just can't remember it all. But all you need to take away from it is it's beautiful. Visually, it's stunning. It may be the best looking animated film of all time, and I mean every single different universe, because every different universe and world has a different art style and color palette, and it's gorgeous. Gwen's world is all done in a very kind of painted style, just like the comic book art when that comic book launched 10 years ago, and it's wonderful. There are a couple of things about the film I wanted more of, but I think we will see in part two, which as of this week has been delayed indefinitely because of the strike, but we should see that film come out next year, hopefully. But there were a couple of things missing. So first of all, the characters who showed up in the first film, most of them aren't there. So we don't have Spider-Man Noir. We don't have Peter Porker Spider-Ham. We do see Penny Parker. We do get Peter B. Parker, and we do get Gwen. But some of the characters are missing. But I get a feeling they're going to have a big role in the second film. The biggest problem with the film, and it's a very small criticism because I know they're going to deliver it on the second part, is that this film did not have the same emotional beats that the first one did. The first one, I think, is a beautiful movie. And just to compare the two, I watched Spider-Verse, this new one, Across the Spider-Verse with Josh, didn't shed a tear the entire time, which is rare for me. As you guys know, I'm a big movie crier. Didn't shed a tear. I got close in a couple of points, but just didn't quite hit me. The next couple of days, I was watching Into the Spider-Verse with my daughter because she'd never seen it before and she likes Spider-Man as well. And we watched it in increments. And when you watch a film over a number of sittings, it's hard to get emotionally invested. Every time I sat down and watched, I cried. Like a scene came on and it made me cry to the point where she made fun of me. So I think that Across the Spider-Verse was just missing a few of those emotional beats. There's definitely a few really good ones, some really touching ones, especially, in regards to the relationship he has with his parents. But I do think that Beyond the Spider-Verse, the third and final part of this trilogy, will really deliver what was missing in part two. And I don't want you to walk away from this being like, oh, part two sucked. Not at all. It's incredible. It's really good. It's very, very ambitious and big and crazy and loud and wonderful. It just didn't have all the heartbeats that I wanted in it, but that's okay. Not every film can do that. And again, I'm sure part three will, but it's great. There's some really wonderful Easter eggs in it, some really great cameos. I think by now most people have heard about the Donald Glover cameo. Obviously, he was in Spider-Man: Homecoming as Miles' uncle in the MCU universe, and we do get to, spoilers, see him in the Prowler outfit. So I don't know whether that's the MCU version. It would make sense if it was, because then we can see him in an MCU film hopefully in the next couple of years. Um, but yeah, that was all very cool. We see snippets of Andrew Garfield's Spider-Man and kind of his rogues at one point. We see snippets of Tobey Maguire and some of his adventures as well. It was weird seeing live action people show up in an animated film because it is so vastly different. But because of the nature of the film and the way it was done, I thought it worked really well. The flick is also insanely funny. I haven't really talked about that, but lots of wonderful jokes in there. Especially the love triangle between Spider Punk, Spider Gwen, and Miles. And also some of Cara and Sony's lines are brilliant as well. He's if you don't know him, he plays Dopinder in Deadpool, so very very funny. He was also in Miracle Workers, but this might be his strongest performance. You know, he really gets to shine in the sequences he's in, and a lot of his lines are really funny and very genuine as well. So it's a great flick. Go see Spider Verse. I've not spoken to anyone who's disliked Spider Verse at this point. Everyone seems to be on the same page. I don't agree with it being the best Spider-Man film of all time. I think that crown still sits with Into the Spider Verse for me, but it's great and it's doing the multiverse better than anything else we've seen so far. Like I liked the Flash's take on the multiverse. I liked No Way Home's take on the multiverse. I liked Loki's take on the multiverse, but I think Across the Spider Verse is doing it the best so far. It's setting the bar. Also, Everything Everywhere All at Once does a very, very good job with the multiverse as well. So those two would be my top multiverse films at this point. But yeah, if you haven't seen Spider Verse yet, it'll be out in physical in a few months' time. Spider Verse is owned by Sony, not by Disney, so we'll keep getting Spider Verse movies and Spider Man movies on DVD and Blu-ray. Disney can't block those, so I said I'd stop, and I can't stop. I apologize. Alrighty, jumping into the third of my four films, I finally got around to seeing Scream 6. I had to wait a long time for that one. It was released in cinemas in March and didn't get a DVD release until July, which is a pretty long window for physical these days. Normally, 3 months is kind of the average, so I had to wait, I think, 4.5 months in the end. And as you will all know, based on my history with the film in this podcast, um, speaking to Tyler and Harley, that really kind of got me back on board with the Scream franchise. And then talking to people like Michael and Kevin as well, got me really excited about it. I rewatched the first five earlier this year in anticipation of this film, and I love all of them. I think five is brilliant. I know that people have mixed feelings about five, but I thought it was a really great introduction to this new version of the franchise with these new directors. And six takes what the film does and elevates it. It's a very different Scream film. If you're familiar with the Scream films, or you're used to kind of them all being self-contained within Woodsboro in that small, quaint town, this is not that movie at all. It's in New York. It's brutal. You see things we've never seen before. The opening sequence is maybe my favorite opening sequence of all the Scream films, definitely on par with 1 and 4, which are very, very strong. And at one point, I actually thought the whole film was going to be set in one evening. It ended up not being that, but that was okay. I thought it was a really strong opening. I'm not going to go into too much detail on Scream 6 because obviously less listeners are going to be, I guess, familiar with the Scream franchise compared to other movies. And again, I watched it a while ago. It might have only been a week or two ago, but it feels like a lot longer. It does some really fun things for the franchise. It's very, very violent for a Scream film in particular. I know that Scream films are somewhat violent by nature, in that they're slashers and our killers always use butcher's knives, but this felt like something different. It felt like a nastier Ghostface, a more revenge-driven Ghostface. I won't spoil anything for this one. I'll try to avoid spoilers as much as possible. But it was kind of a Ghostface with no holds barred. Like this Ghostface was on a mission. Obviously, in the trailer, we got to see Ghostface wield a shotgun, which I thought looked awesome. Being that I'm not a diehard fan of Scream the way a lot of other people are, I came to the franchise late. I remember seeing that and be like, that's cool. I think that a lot of old school fans might have issues with that because that's not his general weapon. But seeing Ghostface in a convenience store in New York with a shotgun, like that's some pretty interesting imagery. And I really dug it. And that sequence is one of the best sequences in the film. The cast is really great. We've got returning characters. We've got Sam and Jenna Ortega. I can't remember her character's name off the top of my head now, but they're both wonderful in it. And Sam gets to take the driver's wheel this time. In the past film, it was more Jenna Ortega's story, but now her sister gets to shine. And there's this whole storyline about I don't know if you've seen the fifth film. We find out that she's Billy Loomis's daughter. Billy Loomis was the original killer in the first Scream, and now she's here, and people have found out, and they think that she's kind of a psycho, and she framed the killers in the previous film for the glory and the fame and things like that, which I thought was a really cool direction. To not only have to kind of survive the trauma of being subject to these serial killers in the previous film, now she's also been kind of framed in like the psychological pressure of being like the outside world blames you for what happened. You don't really see too much in films and franchise like this. So I thought it was a very cool angle. We have the brother and sister. We've got Chad, and I'm blanking on his sister's name at the moment. They're wonderful as well. In the previous film, I wasn't a huge fan of Chad. I thought he was very much just a pretty boy who didn't have too much to offer the film, and that's not a criticism of the actor at all or the film. It's just that character didn't have as much to do in film 5. In film 6, he has a lot to do. He really is fleshed out as a character. He's very charming and kind of very likable, and the actor really turned me around on it. So I really liked his performance. Courtney Cox is definitely wonderful as Gail Weathers. It's her 6th time as Gail, and it was fantastic. I will continue to watch Courtney Cox in these films as long as she keeps coming back. Neve Campbell was definitely missed. She's Sydney Prescott. Her presence was missed, but it didn't detract from the story, and it didn't not feel like a Scream film without her there. Hopefully, the studios can negotiate her salary for this next one, film 7, because it would be good to see her back. I'm not one of those people. I know a lot of fans of the film are like, oh, you know what? It's nice for her to get a break. Like if you love this character so much, why are you wanting her to suffer in the films? I don't have that emotional connection to her the way others do. So I say bring her back. Like keep making her a hero. Like that would be great. But I understand, kind of people like, what, it's nice for her to break because Sydney's gone through a lot over the last 20 years. I get it, but I want Sydney back. I don't really care. But yeah, so it's wonderful. It's definitely one of the strongest entries in the franchise. This is a franchise that started in, I think it was 96, if I remember correctly. And I would put it in the top 3, the top half of the franchise of the 6 films. Scream 6 is definitely up near the top for me. It was really wonderful. 4 and 1, I think, are pretty much on even footing, and then 6 might go just below that. But I've only seen 6 once, and I've seen everything else 2 to 3 times at least. So 6 may, its position may move over time, but I really enjoyed it. Alrighty, last film, and then we'll get the heck out of here for you guys. Thank you for listening as I kind of ramble my way through my feelings about Disney and also the movies they made, ironically. The last movie I watched was Evil Dead Rise, and this was another film I was really looking forward to. It came out in April, and I knew I wasn't going to see it in theaters because the trailers were really scary. And if you've listened to this show before, as much as I love horror, I am a fraidy cat. I do get scared of movies, and I don't like particularly getting scared too much. I like that controlled fear where it gets close to the edge, but never too much for me to take. I don't want to have nightmares, that sort of thing. I got a kid now. It's her job to have nightmares. It's my job to stop the monsters. So the trailer for Evil Dead Rise really did look like it was going to be very much in the same tone as the remake from 2013, which I love. 2013 is an example of a film that is very scary and gets right up to the edge. And if it was any scary, it would probably be too scary for me, but it sits right at the precipice for me. So, and now that I've seen it a couple of times, it doesn't have that same effect. It still does have some creepy moments, but I can handle it. But the first time I saw it, it was one of those ones where I would kind of do the adult equivalent of covering your eyes, and I put my phone up just to block my sight for a few seconds. Very few films have done that. Hereditary was one of those, but I was in the theater, so I couldn't block my eyes. Sinister is another one that did that. And Evil Dead Rise I thought was going to be the same. Sadly, it wasn't. And this is not a negative review. I really enjoyed Evil Dead Rise. I thought it was a great addition to the franchise. It does feel like an Evil Dead film. It was just missing a couple of things for me. And I think the biggest letdown for me, or the biggest disappointment for me, was the trailer was scarier than the film itself. The opening 10, 15 minutes of the film are brilliant and very transgressive for an Evil Dead film. First of all, all the scares happen in the day in the first 10 minutes. We open up on a cabin. There's two girls and a guy in this cabin. The girl who's their friend or who's dating the guy is in bed because she's sick. So her friend's out on the pier, and the girl's boyfriend is kind of messing with her and upsetting her and annoying her the way that your best friend's partner will do sometimes, just to get on your nerves. So that was all, very standard Evil Dead. Then when we finally get to the girl, she starts, kind of getting inside the possessed girl, I should say, the girl who's sick, she's possessed. She starts getting in her friend's head, starts kind of taunting her, and then we see she's actually a deadite. Gets very violent very quickly, scalps her best friend, and kills her partner, and then does some stuff to herself, falls in the water, and then it's like that classic shot. If you've seen the Evil Dead trailers and all the screen grabs, there's a shot of her like floating above the water with the title card behind her. Incredible. Maybe one of the best sequences from any Evil Dead film I've seen. I should point out with the Evil Dead films, I'm not a huge fan of the comedy. And I know that Evil Dead fans were like, well, that's what makes it Evil Dead. That's fine if you like that. 2 and 3 aren't my jam. I don't dislike them. I think they're fine. I think they're enjoyable, but Evil Dead really works for me when it's scary. That first one is still scary. That 2013 remake is very scary. And this one, kind of, it's not goofy, it's not doing that comedy thing. It's just lacking some of the scares. And that was the biggest disappointment. I wanted to be scared of this film. I deliberately scheduled it so it was in the daytime, so I had the house to myself during the day because I was going to be covering my eyes even in the daylight. And when I found that it was quite an easy watch, that was the biggest bummer for me. And maybe I set my expectations too high. But then, so the opening is brilliant. Then we get to kind of where our story is happening. It's in a kind of a high-rise apartment building in a city. And that's a cool new location. It does some very challenging things. It's a single mum with her children in an apartment, and mum gets possessed. And the actress, Alyssa Sutherland, is brilliant. She's really brilliant and creepy throughout the film. And there's some pretty violent stuff. And for the first time in an Evil Dead film, and I would say for a lot of horror films, children are consistently under threat, which I thought was a ballsy move. Like most mainstream horror films won't put children at harm, or not in real harm's way. The characters, obviously, I don't mean the actors. Like they're never putting actors in harm's way, but children are often kind of protected, and that's not the case with this film at all. Like, spoiler alert for this movie, 2 children are flat out murdered in brutal ways. So that was quite shocking and confronting, but it still wasn't scary. I know a lot of people hyped up some of the violent things, so everyone was talking about the cheese grater scene. I let my imagination run wild when people talked about the cheese grater scene. So when it finally came up, I was like, oh, okay, like that would definitely hurt, but that's not even the goriest thing in this movie. It's not even the most upsetting thing in this movie. There are more upsetting things visually in this movie than this cheese grater, but it's fine. They did some new things. So the Necronomicon in this movie is the 3rd version of the Necronomicon, and I've heard a lot of people kind of question why that is and debate why. Why is there a 3rd Necronomicon? Why does this one look different to the one from the remake? Why does it look different from the one in the original films? My theory is that, well, they talk about there being 3 volumes. So I think there are 3 volumes of this book so that all the films can be canon. If you have 3 different versions of the Necronomicon, then the original franchise, the remake, and this film can all coexist because there are 3 different versions of the book. That's my theory. And I think it's a pretty good theory, to be honest. But you can disagree. You can tell me I'm stupid. That's fine, because those things are true as well. Yeah, so then the Evil Dead thing ensues. I know this isn't a very good review. I'm very tired. I'm sorry, guys. Maybe I shouldn't record when I'm tired, but I wanted to put something out and talk about these movies. The standard Evil Dead thing happens. So mum gets possessed, and then she starts passing on the possession to some of her children and other people in the apartment building as well. And then our remaining characters have to try and escape. As it is pretty violent. I wouldn't say it's close to being the most violent in the Evil Dead franchise. I would probably put the remake up top. I can't remember the original one. It's been a while since I've seen that one, but I would say maybe even the original one is more violent than this one, albeit this new one is probably more realistic because of the technology available. But for an Evil Dead film, it actually kind of felt tame and safe. So I'm using those words again. Again, nothing wrong with safe and tame, but it just felt like it was a little bit. They could have pushed the envelope more. especially we are kind of enjoying this renaissance of horror right now with all these different kinds of horror. We've got cerebral horror, we've got these thinking people's horror with Midsommar and Hereditary and stuff like that. A lot more horror filmmakers are pushing the envelopes. I think we could have gone further with it, but it doesn't mean it's a bad film. It's very enjoyable. If you like the Evil Dead films, you will like this one, and it fits into the franchise nicely. It just felt a little bit safe. They get out of the apartment building eventually, and they get down to the parking garage where they have to basically drive out. But then Mum has merged her deadite body with her children's deadite bodies. I'm jumping all over the place, but basically we have this deadite spider monster thing, which was interesting. It was interesting. Like, I've never seen that before in an Evil Dead film. So points there, show me something different and new, and I really liked that actually. But I did prefer the Abomination in the Evil Dead remake as well. So it was cool and interesting and different. I liked all that. I just didn't quite elevate to where I thought it would. And then the film ends by kind of tying into the opening scene, because the opening scene happens a few days after the events of the movie itself. I didn't need that. It was, for continuity's sake, it was nice they did that, but I didn't really need that. I would have probably, looking back, I probably would have preferred an Evil Dead film set during the day in that, like just the day in that cabin, like what happens next after that opening scene. That probably would have been what I preferred. But that doesn't matter. Like, it's a well-made flick. It looks good. The performances are really good, especially Alyssa Sutherland as our main character, our main deadite mum. And it hits all the beats that you would expect from an Evil Dead film. And the film was very successful. Just like Scream, they were both very successful films. We're going to get more of these movies. Hopefully, we won't have to wait 10 years for the next Evil Dead film. And hopefully, the next Evil Dead film is a bit scarier. But anyway, I've been talking for about half an hour or 40 minutes by now, so I'm going to start wrapping things up. So just to conclude, I saw four films. I liked them all. Indiana Jones is great. Definitely go check it out. Go watch Spider-Verse. Those two films are both very long, 2.5 hours, so make time for them. Unless you like to sit through movies in multiple sittings, but I would recommend one sitting each, especially Spider-Verse. It's going to get very complicated. And actually, Indiana Jones is pretty complicated as well. So I would say watch them both in one sitting if you can. Scream, a little bit shorter, around the 2-hour mark, really enjoyable, and a really fresh take on a franchise that's been going strong for 30 years. And Evil Dead Rise, nice and neat, less than 90 minutes, which I like. Keeping it nice and short. I think, these kind of gory slasher films, these horror movies or possession films, don't have to be 2 to 2.5 hour epics. You can get it done in 90 minutes. And I'll say this about Evil Dead Rise. I know I sounded critical. I did really enjoy the film. It moved quickly for me. It didn't waste any time. It just kind of jumped into everything it needed to do and got it done efficiently. So it was really good. So if you've seen those movies, shout them out to me, to comment on the post on Instagram. You can kind of comment and review the podcast as well. So just, kind of share your feelings on the films as well. I'm sure there are going to be very mixed reviews on all of those films, particularly Evil Dead and Indiana Jones. I know that they had some mixed reviews from both the audience and the critics. Scream and Across the Spider-Verse seemed to universally loved, which was wonderful. But I enjoyed them all for what they were and for what they provided. And it's nice to know that cinema is still going strong. We're still telling fun, interesting stories. So go give them all a watch if that's your thing. Tell me what you thought of them below in the comments on Instagram, as if you're watching this on Instagram, which you're not. And yeah, so that's going to do it for this week's episode. So thanks for tuning in and listening to me ramble. As I said, pay attention to the Disney thing. I'm not saying we need to make noise and shut down Disney, not at all, but just be mindful, if it works, if Disney does this in Australia and it works, they're going to do it to other countries, and then other studios are going to start doing it as well. Studios who have their own streaming service, they'll say there's no need for physical media anymore, and it will die. It's been dying for a while, but what we need to remember as consumers, as fans, these things we may not be entitled to it, but we do deserve a choice. We deserve to choose. Do we want to watch it on a streaming service on a TV? Do we want to have a physical copy? I think both are valid. And you're not losing money by having physical media. You're still making money, especially if there's steelbooks go for $50. If you import them, which I've done, I'm not going to tell you how much I spent on steelbooks, but I've spent close to 3 figures on certain steelbooks because that was the only version available. So the die-hard collectors, the ones who want physical media, will pay for it. So anyway, that's going to do it. I'm unsure if there's a show next week at the moment. So the week of the 6th of August, I believe it is. I'm looking at my calendar. Yes, the 6th of August, I am meant to have a new episode come out. I do not know if that will happen yet because I will be In surgery, as I mentioned, nothing life-threatening, just getting a couple of teeth pulled, the old wisdom's out, and then I'll be back to normal. So if I can get a show together before then, I will. But if not, it'll just be a brief hiatus before I'm back. But I want to thank everyone for listening as always. If you want to follow along online, jump to Instagram. I was a teenage film snob, underscores between every single word. The hashtag I was a teenage film snob actually just crossed 1,000, which was very cool. So that's been tweeted, hashtagged 1,000 times or more. It could just be me, I'm not sure. But surely I'm not the only one doing that hashtag. So that was very cool. We are getting very, very close to 900 listeners or streams of the podcast, which is very exciting as well. And the followers are slowly growing on Instagram. I haven't been trying too hard. As if you saw my post the other day, I've been a little bit under the weather. I've been a little bit tired. I've had a few things going on in my personal life. And honestly, getting my teeth removed is probably a vacation for me. So I'm looking forward to that. In the meantime, if you want to write a review, I'll take anything. 5 stars, 1 stars, interact with it, review it on Spotify, on Apple Podcasts, anywhere you get your podcast from. Drop me a line on Instagram. I'm pretty chatty when I'm online. I will respond to things. I will engage. I like talking to everyone about movies because, as you can tell, even when I'm by myself, I can't shut up about movies. That is going to do it. I think if you want a t-shirt, tpublic.com, search for I Was a Teenage Film Snob, get yourself a hoodie, t-shirt, or sticker. They're gorgeous, and first-time customers get 20% off, unless I'm mistaken. That may have changed, but check it out and pick up some sweet, sweet merch. Alrighty, this is the last time I'm telling you we're done. We are officially done for this week. So, as I say on my show every single week of this podcast, guys, I was a teenage film snob. I was, but I'm trying to be better. I'll see you next week or the week after, depending on my surgery. Enjoy.